time to dive into the tech sector. And we're speaking with Dan Romanoff, equity analyst over at Morningstar. You have a few names that you're watching, Microsoft, you have Salesforce, Adobe. Just a big picture, though, thought, Dan, where we stand. We're watching AI, we're watching tech coming back and doing so well here at the end of the year. Does this continue as we're going into 2025?
Yeah, so thanks for having me, Nicole, and I'm glad you kind of let it off that way because we could see the fundamentals of any one company. Salesforce just reported, for example. We could talk about that in a second, but the overall move is really remarkable, I think. And in the last 3 months, you had software just really ripping. It's up loosely 30% for the group, perhaps a little bit more than that, which is pretty staggering on no real news. These companies are generally reporting good results and they're kind of guiding down, maybe a little better, but it's kind of mixed. And so I think that what you're seeing is a lot of interest rate changes getting baked into people's models. And so therefore the stocks have been running. And so looking into next year, I think that, yeah, there's a lot of interesting things that we can watch. The generative AI stuff, I think, is still a big theme and everyone's really excited about that. And for some of our names in particular, I think that is more meaningful. And so, yeah, I think over the next couple of quarters, we're still going to see that same level of excitement. And I think the stocks will continue to move pretty well as long as there's not a negative catalyst, say, to halt that.
Yeah, and you mentioned Salesforce. I mean, we should start with that, with CRM. I mean, just over 3 months, this name is up 46%. It certainly jumped on the earnings. Good news there. And when I had my guests on, they seemed very feeling that it was a very solid quarter. Some of your thoughts?
Yeah, the quarter itself was great. I think the stock was up 10 or 11% the next day. They beat on revenues. They had I think the themes were the same. Large deals, multi-cloud deals were very healthy. They had just released Agentforce, which is sort of their generative AI customer service virtual agent. They just released it in the last week of the quarter. They saw 200 deals involving that. Mark Benioff, the CEO, was very excited about the pipeline for Agentforce in particular. And so where maybe they were having some fits and starts earlier in the year regarding generative AI, all of a sudden they have a real product lineup and there's a lot of excitement around that. And so it's easy to see why you'd have the reaction the way it was, even if the guidance for the fourth quarter was in fact a little shy of investor expectations.
Right, understood. And then there's Microsoft, which is up almost 20% in 1 year. Has the shareholders pretty happy over many decades, continued growth, continued dividend payouts, doesn't disappoint generally, and it's up 20% in 1 year. I think that's a great year for any stockholder. What is Microsoft doing right, and can Microsoft continue to be a leader going forward?
Yeah, so Microsoft is interesting in the context of the software move. So software is up 30 or 35% in just 3 months. Microsoft is only up maybe 8 or 9%. And so usually what I see is Microsoft is sort of a harbor in a storm. And so when there's a choppy environment, investors flock to Microsoft and maybe are sort of out of some of the more momentum-y or high-flying kind of names. And so you can kind of see the reverse trade happening. And to your point, other than that, Microsoft, yeah, the stock is in a vacuum. This 20% return is very good. And what they are doing right is they are a leader in public cloud. And Microsoft Azure is their answer to Amazon's AWS, and the two of them are the clear leaders in that field. And that is a very secular theme. We have years of growth ahead of us. And right now, that growth, despite the book of business being, flirting with $70 billion, that growth is accelerating for Microsoft, and it's really amazing. And there's not really a precedent for that in technology. So that is definitely something they're doing right. And again, the underlying theme there right now is generative AI and the usage finally starting to gain some traction underneath that.
Yeah. What's interesting is Adobe, and we've seen some buy recommendations. It's been an underperformer to the market. So it's not like anybody comes out and says, wow, Adobe's been great, because it hasn't. But you are seeing some buy ratings, and there are people who are saying, it's a better AI play than Oracle. There is a lot of potential in the AI world when it comes to Adobe. Is there enough to make it one that you like?
Yeah, so if you're going to stick with the AI theme, then the Firefly family of models that Adobe has created, that's their proprietary sort of generative AI answer to Anthropic and Dolly and Sora from some others. So I mean, it's a great product. I've seen it in action. I've played with it myself. They're all very impressive in their own right, and Firefly is no different. And Firefly is already embedded in all of Adobe's tools, and Adobe is basically on the desktop of every creative professional. And so, therefore, I see Adobe as being really well positioned within AI. And the reason that I would highlight it is because over the last 3 months, Adobe is like one of the few stocks that is actually in negative territory. It's actually down a few percent. So not shockingly negative or anything, but it's kind of been up and down this year, and it started with some choppy guidance even in the first quarter, going back to February or March of this year when they reported. So um, realistically, they're reporting good quarters, and even if their guidance was a little light in their last quarter, their quarters themselves are good. And the Firefly family of models certainly gives you hope. And then they're using Adobe Express to sort of draw all these new users into the funnel. So they have this enormous
Okay.
base of users they're waiting to upsell to the higher price Creative Cloud.
All right. All right. Thank you, Dan Romanoff. And we're showing the XLK new highs. Thank you, Dan Romanoff of Morningstar. Good to see you.